Good evening, everyone. So, councillors, members of the public in attendance, got a good showing tonight, and all of our viewers and also the officers and our viewers live streaming tonight's planning committee meeting. My name is Councillor Christine O'Laris. I'm the Mayor of Darebin City Council and I'm the chairperson of tonight's meeting. It's my pleasure to welcome you all along to this planning committee meeting, and I'll declare the meeting open at, can someone give me the time? 6:34 p.m. So I'm going to go straight to a welcome to country. So I just want to start by acknowledging the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people who are the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we're meeting here today. I want to recognise their continuing connection to land, to waters and to culture. So there's no apologies for tonight. I will, however, ask if there are any disclosures of conflicts of interest from anyone. Councillor Greco.
Thank you, Chair. I have a material conflict of interest in relation to one of the consultants that's listed in the report, and as a result of a past commercial dealing, and therefore I will be vacating the chamber when that item is being decided on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other conflicts of interest? No? Okay. If anything arises during the meeting that makes you realise that you do have one, please let me know and declare it at that time. Oh, you don't have to leave yet, Councillor Greco. Council has an occupational health and safety responsibility to ensure everyone attending the meeting tonight feels safe, both physically and emotionally. It's great to have such a lot of interest in tonight's meeting, but I'd like to remind everyone in attendance to be respectful of one another, and as outlined in our governance rules, please note the following, which is that a councillor or any other person who addresses a meeting must do so in a courteous and respectful manner and must take direction from the chairperson, which is myself, whenever called on to do so. Any member of the public physically attending a meeting must not utter any offensive, indecent, insulting or objectionable items or words, and that's including words that are racist, sexist, homophobic, and please don't interject or gesticulate offensively. Silence must be preserved in the gallery at all times during a meeting, other than when someone's invited to speak. And if any members of the public engage in conduct that is improper or disorderly, the chairperson may direct that person to cease their conduct, and that person must comply with that direction. I'm just confident that nothing along those lines will happen tonight, but it is a requirement of our governance rules that we fill you in on that every time we meet. So thank you for listening to that. We're going to start. Item 4 is confirmation of minutes from the previous meeting. Councillors, could I please have a mover for the adoption of the minutes of the Planning Committee held on the 9th of September 2024? Thank you. That's moved by Councillor Emily Demetriadis. Do I have a seconder for this motion? Okay, we have Councillor Alexander Sangster. Okay, maybe if we can just get someone else who was at the meeting and we'll clarify this later. Thank you.
I'm happy to second it.
Thank you, Councillor.
Since I was present at the previous meeting.
Yeah, terrific. Okay. All those in favour? Sorry. Carried unanimously. Thank you. All right. We will, as we've got an apology from Councillor Greco due to the conflict of interest for that particular item, I'm just wanting to let everyone know that there will be an even number in the chambers, so that might require me as the Mayor to make a casting vote. And so I just want to be clear that my casting vote will be the same as my deliberative vote in that circumstance. Okay, so we are up to 5.1, which I presume is the point that
my
Councillor
time
Greco
gets it.
now need to leave. Thank you so much. I'll just give him a moment. And we'll first up get a presentation from one of the staff, Harrison Smith. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening to councillors and the general public. So today the subject site is 14 Hopetoun Avenue in Reservoir. The land is located on the east side of Hopetoun Avenue between Knox Street, located 16 metres to the north, and Vale Street, located 125 metres to the south. The land is regular in shape. It's 14.02 metres in width and 35 metres in depth for roughly a 513 square metre site area. It currently contains a single-storey brick dwelling with a tiled roof. It features a garage to the rear. Private open space is also located to the rear or the east of the site. And the land contains a restrictive covenant. This covenant restricts quarrying, brick making, removal of materials for the making of bricks, generally not applicable to the proposal at hand. The surrounding area, so it's just located just outside what's known as the principal public transport network area, has good access to public transport in that area along Gilbert Road. The site is located approximately 500 square metres to the nearest activity centre located at the junction of Gilbert and Regent Street, and it's also about 600 metres away from the Coburg Hill Shopping Centre. On-street parking in the surrounding streetscape, including Hopetoun Avenue, is unrestricted. The proposal is for the construction of an additional dwelling to the rear of the existing. So the existing two-bedroom dwelling will be retained and a new two-bedroom dwelling will be constructed. That dwelling will be 2 stories and both will retain their ground floor private open space. The new development will obviously have a contemporary design, has a pitched roof, built form featuring brick and cladding and modern contemporary materials, but in neutral tones. The existing crossover to Hopetoun Avenue will be retained and will provide on-site car parking for both dwellings. No new crossovers are proposed. The development is generally in compliance with Clause 55, also known as Res Code. There are some minor variations, including to the access way. Currently, the Australian standards and the planning scheme calls for access ways are about 3 metres in width, minimum 3 metres. However, Council has accepted access ways as low as 2.75 metres on the basis that volumes of traffic are generally low and that these widths can still accommodate what's known as a B85 design vehicle, which has a standard width of 1.87 metres. The primary reason why we support a narrowing of this standard is to support the construction of new dwellings behind an existing dwelling. The other standard that's been has a minor variation has to do with windows to shared access ways. Generally, when new developments, shared accessway windows are usually has to be set away from the accessway to minimise impacts. In this case, because it's an existing dwelling, they have existing windows alongside the accessway, so there is a minor variation. However, this is considered acceptable. We do recommend a condition that windows be double glazed to minimise any potential impacts from the new dwelling. We received 9 objections to this application. A variety of grounds were made, including overdevelopment, impacts to neighbourhood character, visual bulk, loss of view, privacy, overshadowing, and general non-compliance with the planning scheme. In regards, I won't address all of these grounds, but some of the main ones, such as neighbourhood character. So this development is pretty good in regards to that it It accords with our neighbourhood character by retaining the existing dwelling to the street. Other key design forms that it tries to seek in terms of neighbourhood character is setting the development back from the boundaries to retain a general appearance or pattern of development. Because the existing dwelling to the street isn't being removed, it generally presents to the streetscape from a neighbourhood character, say retaining front gardens, the general appearance of the street because it's only a single dwelling, while the rear dwelling has been sited in a way in which still maintains its generous garden area for landscaping opportunities. Other concerns that were raised were tree protection, and tree protection has been, for the most immediate trees, been addressed through recommended conditions by our tree management unit at Council. And yes, that concludes the general summary. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we will now hear submissions. So, councillors, we've got 3 submitters who wish to address the Planning Committee here tonight. As per the instrument of delegation to the Planning Committee, each submitter will have 3 minutes to speak. So when I call your name, please approach the lectern to address the committee. So first up, we've got Jake de Ross. Thank you, Jake.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jake. We prepared the plans for Sandra and Alex at 14 Hopton Avenue Reservoir. So in terms of a design point of view, personally, we think that we've accommodated everything that was requested for this application, both with the client's request and council's. We've ran this through a pre-app, RFIs, tried to address every concern possible. As Harrison said, there were obviously a few minor things that naturally can be conditioned, like the windows would be one on that access way, but I'm sure that my applicant is more than happy to accommodate those items. In terms of neighbourhood design response, it's only one unit. We've done the best with the site that we possibly can to try and achieve the brief. So it's only a 2-bedder to the rear. We meet car parking standards, we meet setbacks, we meet garden area, permeability, private open space standards. I believe we respect the neighbourhood with what we've come up with. Our overall heights, our first floor setbacks, I think they're all considerate of neighbouring properties. I mean, we're willing to work with certain items that were brought upon by objectors, like windows that could be seen as overlooking, although they are still compliant. I'm sure we're happy to move small things to try and accommodate items like that, but in the scheme of things, I think what we're presented is a good design outcome for this block and for what we've been given to work with. Like I said, we've tried to keep in a design in what constraints that we've had with the site to keep every party happy at some point. Whether how it's viewed is different, I'm not sure, but we've also gone through, I know there's trees towards the rear, we're respecting those trees, tree protection zones, we're staying out of those items. In terms of, that's kind of the main points I want to put forward. We're happy to look at some items, but all in all, I think we've presented a good design outcome for the site. Thank you.
Thank you. So next speaker is Giovanni Sandro Di Matteo. Can you come forward and make your submission?
Hello everyone, thank you for the opportunity. I'm here with my wife and my son. Just would like to let you know that what we intended to do is to build a home for my son, which he will contribute to obviously. A little perplexed while we're here, but I understand that some neighbours have expressed some concerns and have also canvassed a lot of people around the area to sign a petition. From the very beginning, we sought advice and guidance from council planning on the proposal with pre-planning meetings, as Jake said, clarification to ensure the proposal was acceptable and complied with Planning and Environment Act, Local Government Act and any other relevant legislation. At pre-planning meetings, the Planning Department responded with no concerns with the proposed plans, but suggested we add a window to the eastern side of the upper storey bedroom and also extend the front veranda to make it a little bit visible from Hopeton Avenue, which we haven't complied with. Every possible impact assessment to date has been carried out: daylight, sunlight, environment, arborist, drainage, soil, you name it, has been done. Considering all these assessments, also consideration to any of the neighbours' privacy has also been factored into this design. The first floor eastern facing window is narrow and located at ceiling level. It is also opaque, restricting visibility in and out. The first floor window facing the north, which is reduced in size and positioned in the eastern corner of the room with a privacy screen added. Throughout the application process, the council did not indicate any concerns with the proposal and everything has been followed by their guidance. I know the neighbours at 19 Knox Street have raised some concerns around privacy, but again, these have been considered and meet the legal requirements regarding height and elevation. The heavily tree-lined boundary and fence restricts visibility to what is basically the service side of their property. In saying this, we are not unreasonable people and are willing to do any minor amendments, as Jake has said, to appease any of their concerns. An example, the north-facing window which features 19A Knox Street can be removed if they think the privacy screens are not enough. Also, part of the fence in the boundary of 19 Knox Street and 12 Hopeton Avenue was recently updated to a colour-bond fence of approximately 2.4 metres in height. We are happy to continue this fencing all the way along. Local and state governments have expressed a need to have this sort of development with more and more carefully designed duplex and townhouse developments being built. The property right next door is a duplex property, which is coincidentally owned by one of the owners of 19 Knox Street. I visited some of the neighbours of Hopeton Avenue. Well, actually, I've visited all except for the people who are renting properties. And they have signed a letter that states they have no objection to this development.
You're going to need to wind up a little bit.
Sorry?
You'll need to wind up. You're nearly out of time.
Yep, no worries at all. So just to emphasise, throughout the entire process, we have followed the process and produced legal acceptable plans, which are in complete compliance to the relevant building codes and regulations set out by the governing bodies, and see no grounds for Alex's home not to proceed.
Thank you very much.
Would you like that letter, signed letter? Is that something?
I think
is
not at the moment. Thank you. If you could give it to one of the officers, that would be great. Thank you. Third speaker is Catherine Audley. Catherine, can you please come up to the pedestal? You have 3 minutes. Okay. Hang on a moment. You can't walk around the building, so yeah.
He's got a hearing impairment, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, you have to give them to the sorry.
No problem. Okay. You may start, Kathy. We're going to start the timer.
Hi, my name is Cathy Audley. I'm a psychologist, mother of one son. Our family home is at 19 Knox Street Reservoir, adjoining the development site. I'm here tonight representing our neighbourhood who will be adversely impacted by the proposal. It is inconsistent with and fails to respect the preferred neighbourhood character, which is Californian bungalows and homes built in the post-war years with large front and rear gardens. The proposal will degrade the unique identity and character of our neighbourhood. Hopeton Avenue, Knox Street and the neighbourhood at large is a quiet, family-friendly area with diverse, predominantly single-level, 3 and 4 bedroom family homes as illustrated in your folders. Unit developments do not suit or feature in this area of intact, consistent and undisturbed separate family homes. There is a demand in our neighbourhood by families to purchase 3 or more bedroom separate homes with spacious gardens because of its close proximity to Reservoir West Primary School. The visual bulk from the built scale of the proposal will be overwhelming. The height and bulk will completely obscure our and surrounding neighbours' views from kitchens, living areas and secluded private open spaces. We are on a downward slope west to east from the proposal, resulting in the visual bulk looming over us, thus being even more imposing. The overwhelming imposing size and bulk of the development will not only obliterate both our and surrounding neighbours' opportunities to enjoy the natural beauty of our open space and trees in our and their backyards and surrounds, but will be an absolute blight on the skyline. It is a completely unacceptable loss of amenity. Natural light will be significantly restricted to our and surrounding neighbours' properties. Overlooking severely compromises ours and surrounding neighbours' privacy. Our livability and quality of life, along with our adjoining neighbours, would be significantly degraded. Advice from Council's engineering department states that the stormwater drainage system does not have the capacity to accommodate the drainage runoff generated by the proposal, and that a larger pipe would need to be installed, requiring the digging up of our backyard running the entire length of our western boundary, threatening the survival of all vegetation, including our large established canopy trees, which are in excess of 65 years old. Our backyard provides not only a green and cooling environment, but is a haven for biodiversity and provides a significant level of contribution to our neighbourhood's leafy character and is integral to Darebin's climate emergency plan. The withholding of internal reports advice is a complete lack of transparency. The extensive permit conditions would result in a material change to the outcome shown on the advertised plans, further having significant impacts on adjoining residents and neighbourhood character. Thus, Council does not have the benefit of knowing the implications of the required changes. We strongly urge the Council to vote against this particular development. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Okay. All right. And apologies for the confusion. Okay. Now we'll move on to the debate, but I'll first just say, do we have a... Oh, sorry. We'll first have questions from the officers. So, councillors, does anyone have any questions you'd like to ask in clarification? Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor, just wondering if the staff could address the point just made about the impact to the trees during the development process, and tell us what we realistically expect in that area.
Thank you, Councillor. So we, in the planning sphere, in regards to development, we generally take tree protection under high regard. Generally, when there are trees on the site or external to the site, nature strip included, we generally take measures in which to mitigate impacts. So we have a tree management team, council arborists, that would review arborist reports that we would request from the applicant. In this circumstance, the applicant provided an arborist report to council. They review that, they check its credibility and its recommendations, and then they also recommend on top of that. In this instance, there are several trees located to the in proximity, and generally a tree that has intersecting what's known as tree protection zones, which is like an area that circles around the tree depending on its size to the Australian standard. If they intersect with the development, then we would mitigate any impacts to those trees. And in this circumstance, a garage that would have been provided for the new dwelling is now a carport, and it's reduced in size to protect a large tree in the rear, to the rear of the property. Anything in regards to trees along the easement and drainage that fell outside the scope of this application, but any trees within close proximity will be managed through conditions on the permit. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Aturi.
Thank you, Mayor. In relation to the point made about drainage, if separate to this proposal, if another development was proposed in the vicinity, would the drainage have to be upgraded in a similar way?
Thank you for the question. Through the Mayor, the advice from the Council's integrated water team is that the current pipe, the current drain, is undersized, and any development would result in the need to upgrade that drain substantially.
Any further questions, Councillor Jelly?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. So the report in the papers for this evening's meeting mentioned Council's housing strategy. So can you just give some guidance on how the issues raised this evening around visual bulk and amenity, how that fits in with the housing strategy sort of more broadly?
Thank you, Councillor. So yes, there is the housing strategy is addressed in the report. So this area is under what's known as incremental change areas. So across Darebin we have 3 categories: minimal change, so usually heritage precincts, areas which will experience maybe no infill development or very little, maybe rear extensions and the like. Incremental for what you would see in the surrounding activity centres, such as this site, where you would have experienced townhouse developments, 2, 3, 4 dwellings, depending on the size of the block and the land. And then obviously there's substantial, where you would see maybe apartment developments and more substantial townhouse developments. So when considering this development, because it's incremental, this is only one additional dwelling behind an existing that generally falls within that incremental as well. It's also only 2 stories. The zone allows up to 3 stories in height. The proposed development is 2 stories and well within the maximum building height. The other things to manage that kind of goes beyond the housing strategy, which is the second part of your question, which is how do we mitigate issues like visual bulk and overdevelopment. Under Res Code, which is clause 55 of the planning scheme, they deal with these issues through standards such as side and rear setbacks. So this development complies with side and rear setbacks. It provides quite generous rear setbacks to the neighbour to the east, to the neighbour to the north. It is compliant, and to the south, well in excess of the standard. And that generally is how, in planning, we address issues like, visual bulk and the like. So overall, because it meets those standards and it's only one additional dwelling and only at 2 bedrooms as well, it's generally considered to be compliant and in accordance with the housing strategy.
Okay. Any further questions? No? Okay, then I'd like to ask, do we have a mover for someone who would like to put forward a motion? Julie?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to move the officer's recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Okay, do we have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Jelly? Okay, so does the mover wish to speak?
Yes, Mayor, I will briefly, thank you. So I guess just to say thank you to the submitters for tonight and for the various information that we've received over the last few months as we've been coming to this point. I think in the chamber we can clearly hear the passion from both sides here. Based on the questions posed by the 9 objectors and the wealth of information that's been shared with us, a number of councillors chose to call in the matter. So that's, I guess, why we're here tonight. And in doing that, we've then been able to receive a lot of extra advice from the officers, and of course, hearing from people tonight as well. We've heard a wide variety of concerns, and I think the officer's report has done well to summarise, assess and address these. So I thank them for the work on this. Drainage was one of the issues raised by residents that I had asked for further information on. As we know, with climate change impacts becoming ever more real, we are experiencing more extreme weather and storm events and heavy rain, and the developments in our suburbs just, really aren't set up to deal with it very well. And that's not a Darebin issue, that's a Melbourne-wide issue. We are experiencing that increasing pressure. I think given that we understand that, and we've heard again that the drainage is not, it's at capacity basically we're hearing. I think that the report does give us some information in relation to it not being flood prone, so there's a lesser risk here, but despite that, we've heard that we do need to manage the issue. So I'm pleased that that's been taken really seriously, and the drainage is being looked at and given a lot of weight under the conditions, and it's requested an amended stormwater management system report and a water sensitive urban design plan as well needing to be submitted for the approval of council. And I think this will give more clarity and certainty to all involved. Similarly, on the tree protection, we've heard a lot of passionate information about protecting the trees and the quality that they offer to the neighbourhood. And I can see the officers have addressed that with lots of conditions to be managed through a landscape plan as well. So I'm pleased to see that. That needs to be followed really carefully, obviously, if this does go ahead. So I think, look, overall, this is a modest development in nature, as has been pointed out through the officers' recommendations and information. It's got lots of concerns raised against it, but lots of permit conditions have been put in place to manage those. And we've heard the willingness of the submitters to take those seriously and address them. So I do think it strikes the right balance of adding some new housing stock while addressing the concerns.
Councillor O'Brien.
So I hope we can all move on harmoniously. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the seconder wish to speak?
I'll reserve my right to speak later in the debate. Thank you, Mayor.
Are there others who wish to speak? Councillor Boglis.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Councillor O'Brien, you got up just before me, so I did have a motion, but I will just share the following instead. I'd like to thank the 9 residents and objectors who are seeking their support this evening to express their concerns about the planning application at 14 Hope Turn Avenue Reservoir and the long-term impacts of this planning permit on the adjoining and surrounding properties. As councillors, when we make decisions such as this, there are many factors that come into play that we may not necessarily see. As residents and objectors have expressed this evening, and thank you for the images provided to us this evening, the leafy backyard with ferns and expansive green space have been extremely well maintained and loved, with 8 well-established trees spanning over 65 years and many ferns and lively bird life that have called the residents' backyard home. This highlights the role of biodiversity, climate resilience, wildlife habitat and urban cooling, of which we as a council are seeking to improve on in our current term together. We as council nor developer can 100% confirm that the proposed easement across the west aspect of the residents' property won't threaten the current tree root system or affect the longevity and increase the risk of tree loss. I believe the officer's recommendation is contrary to the standards and objectives of clause 55021 of the Darebin planning scheme regarding residential policy, residential character, height, side and rear setbacks, walls on boundaries, including environmental and sustainability conflicts and design requirements, solar access and dwelling diversity, as we've also heard from our submitter here tonight. Clause 55045, overshadowing is also a large concern for neighbours' properties, which will be significant. The development will unreasonably overshadow both owners and adjoining properties, which can compromise solar access. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Boglis. Are there any other speakers? No? Then we'll go to the vote.
Sorry, Mayor, do I have a right of reply? Sorry, not right of reply, but can I have the opportunity to speak?
You can speak.
Thank you. Thank you very much to everybody who's attended this meeting this evening and presented to us, and notwithstanding all the information that has been provided about your circumstances and your home and your neighbourhood. The officer's recommendation, the motion we're considering here, presents robust options for the issues that you've raised to be managed to ensure that trees are protected and that stormwater is managed appropriately. And this is done through providing additional conditions on the planning permit. These are very tricky issues for council to manage. This is a very challenging decision for us to make here this evening, particularly in the context of a single planning permit. It's difficult to manage all of these sorts of challenges, particularly around stormwater. But I believe that the additional conditions that have been proposed will provide all parties with the best opportunity to address the issues appropriately within the framework of the planning scheme, Planning Environment Act, and Council's obligations and Council's existing policies around housing. As I said, it's very challenging to balance these different elements. I was one of the councillors who called in this application to enable us to review this decision, and I believe this has given the officers the opportunity to recommend additional conditions on this permit, which is what we have here tonight. And this presents a balanced option to manage competing desired outcomes. And the concerns that I raised when I called in this matter included poor bus services, particularly the nearby 553 service, a lack of access to car share schemes to provide households with the option to access a second car on an as-needs basis. And I hope that this decision actually leads to greater advocacy by this council for improved public transport, including connectivity and more frequency with bus services, and also safer alternate transport means in terms of safe cycling infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you. And you do have a right of reply if you'd like. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you. I guess just the last thing I would add is, these are complex matters. These are people's homes. These are people's backyards. But I think what we have here before us is parents wanting to build a unit for their son. It's not like some massive development. It's not a remote landlord that doesn't understand the nature of the location. So I understand that this is complicated for everybody. But I just think, we bear that in mind. Thank you.
Okay, we will now move on to the vote. So all those in favour, please raise your hand. So that's Councillor Arturi, Councillor Jelly, Councillor O'Brien, Councillor Sangster, Councillor Solkos and myself. And all those against, please raise your hand. Councillor Boglis and Councillor Demetriadis abstaining. Okay, thank you. All right, so we'll move on now to the next matter, but thank you very much for all of the people who came along to present. You're welcome to stay if you want. Oh. Sorry, just declaring that motion was carried unanimously. Yeah. Not unanimously. Can someone let Councillor Greco know that he can come back? Welcome back, Councillor Greco. We're up to item 6.1, which is general planning information scheduled VCAT applications. We have the report up. Well, we don't have the report, but we have the recommendation up on the screen. Do I have a mover of the motion? Councillor Sokos. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Arturi. Is there? Is there anyone against the motion? No? Well, I'll put the motion to the vote then. All those in favour, please raise your hand. And that one is carried unanimously. So, thank you. There are no confidential reports to be considered this evening, so item 7 is of no consequence. Item 8 is close of the meeting. So, councillors, there is no other business to consider this evening. I'd like to declare the planning meeting closed at 7:14 p.m. Thank you, councillors, staff, and members of the public who might be still viewing for attending this evening. And I'll now request